Yo, yo, yo. Hey, guys, welcome back to another awesome edition of the Best Practices Show podcast. You ever thought to yourself, I never want to go through this embezzlement thing? Well, nobody does. It's not fun. It destroys the trust, among other things, in your office. Today, we bring on Matt Nelson from the California Dental Association, and they are super helpful with some great tips to reduce the chances or prevent embezzlement altogether. Make sure you guys listen up. It's just great business practice to follow these steps to create a healthy practice and a healthy relationship with the person that handles money in your practice. Hope you guys enjoy the episode. We'll see you soon. Hey guys, welcome back to the Best Practices Show podcast. You know the jam here. Our job is to bring you great information from great thinkers everywhere to help you improve your practice and your life. And today we're going to be talking about one of those subjects that really nobody likes to talk about. And you only like to talk about it when it's happened and it's already behind us. And it's called embezzlement. And today we're going to be talking about just basic good controls and best practices so that you can create a trust-based environment that's built on the right things in your dental practice and you don't have to experience it in the first place. And so it's going to be a fun episode. And we also have some show notes. So I got my friend Matt Nelson from the California Dental Association. Matt, thanks for being on. I appreciate you, buddy.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Super excited to be here.
Yeah. And just I'll share with you guys, I'm a big fan of a lot of these organizations. The California Dental Association has been really a great group of people for us to work with. And I love education. I love this industry. And so as you guys were embarking on this educational process, I'm like, yes, let's do it. And so, Matt, I always want to start here. We've got a lot of young listeners. I want people to know who you are. So share with us a little bio. Who are you? Tell us a little bit about your role.
Yeah, well, Matt Nelson, like you said, I work for the California Dental Association. I've been here about 2.5 years, approaching 2.5 years, and focus on, our member service center, focused on practice support and giving our doctors, our members, expert guidance. So, when they call in about practice operations or transitions or questions about things in the office, I'm there to help. Prior to that, I'd spent about a year in private consulting, and before that, about 5 years running a large group practice.
All right. And this is important not only for the CDA, but is providing additional support for dentists coming out and into private practice, not only new practices, but established practices, making sure that they feel really well supported in all of these things. And I want you to share a few stories because you and I were talking about stories before we hit the go button. You're not just a beginner at this. You actually have a background in some of this stuff. So can you share a little bit of your story?
Yeah, my pre-dental life, I was an internal theft investigator for Target. And Target does a really good job of teaching and training how to, identify, investigate, and resolve internal theft and external theft, but a really big focus on internal since that ends up being the bigger dollar amount. And, I came into dentistry and, I'd worked a few years, and I had in my office was pediatric and orthodontics, and we did this like fun exercise where, the kids coming in would wear like rock and roll month where they'd wear band shirts or crazy sock month or whatever it was, and they could put their name in for a drawing, and we would draw the name, and at the end of the month, the winners would get gift cards. And we do the drawing, we call the winners, they show up, go to get the gift cards, can't find them, they're gone. So I look everywhere. So I've got these people waiting for me, parents, patients. So I run over to the grocery store, the parking lot, buy new gift cards, come back, give them to them. Very embarrassed, obviously, about the whole process. So then I have to dig in and figure out, like, where did these gift cards go? And, that's kind of when it dawned on me that this is really under discussed and under researched and under trained in dentistry in general. But I went back and dug through these gift cards, found the receipts, looked at the transaction history, and the gift cards were used. There was a college about 30 minutes away from the office. They were all used on a Monday right by the college. I had one employee that was off on Mondays to go to the college. So it was pretty easy to go back through and find the steps of where those gift cards were used, and had to pull that person in and do an interview and term them. And it really came back to, one, you know, we never really talk about it, or you never really think it's going to happen in dentistry. But but two, I had given this person access to the safe. I didn't have proper controls in place, and then made it easy for her to take these gift cards. So I think back, like, this person didn't have a track record or a background of theft. So how much did I help by not having the proper controls in place?
Right. Right. And so we're going to talk about controls, and you've got a great 3-step process. And before we do that, I want you to talk about the impact and the why. Like, why is this so important, and how big of an impact is this on a dentist who might be listening?
Yeah, it's really interesting. And again, like we talked about, that this is, under discussed, but, going back to, there's a survey from the ADA from 2018, and of the survey, about 49% of the dentists that responded had, it said that they had experienced some type of, embezzlement or employee theft. Really now, what we're finding now at Dentistry IQ had an article. They said 3 and 5, and it's, with COVID and with people furloughed and laid off, and doctors started opening more of their own mail and finding weird things. And 3 and 5, that's 60%. That's a pretty big impact.
Mm-hmm. And
But
what?
we.
Go
Sorry,
ahead.
go ahead.
Why do you think dentists are just maybe more susceptible to this, or that it's that high?
Yeah, there's gosh, I don't think there's a lot of training, like we talked about. A lot of dentists don't think it'll happen to them because it's their staff that they hired and they brought in.
Right.
Third party payments are hard to track. Things like consultants, bookkeepers, CPAs, the second set of eyes on a lot of these things are usually the first to go when things aren't going how they're supposed to. There is, in healthcare, more than any other industry, is this sense of, kind of like entitlement, that the staff feels like, if I didn't book this appointment, or if I didn't do this treatment coordination, or if I didn't get this person to say yes to doing this treatment, doctor wouldn't even have this. And there's this, more in healthcare than anywhere else, we see this among staff.
Yeah. And
And then sorry, circling back to just impact, it's obviously there's financial loss, but there's turnover. And listening to a lot of your shows, obviously you are a big proponent of time and having time back. So when there's turnover, you're recruiting and staffing and training, and there goes some of your time. And studies right now are showing that hiring and training someone's $8,000 to $15,000. But then, how do you not have low trust and morale in the office after having someone you trust steal from you? And how do you not feel betrayed? And how do you not project that on to the rest of the staff? That it's going to take a conscious effort.
yeah, I'll never forget. I saw one of our dentists one day at a conference, and I said, "How you doing?" He said, "Not good." I go, "What's up?" I just had it happen. I said, "What happened?" He said, "The E." I'm like, "What?" And he said, "It wasn't the money. It's like, it's the trust. It's almost like the oxygen gets sucked out of your practice, and you thought everything was great, and it just takes a long time to rebuild that trust that you've worked so hard to create. And you overtrust, and you just say, hey, listen, they got it. And as a busy dentist, you're just occupied a lot. And so this whole thing of delegating. Now, again, the whole purpose of this podcast is not to create any fear. What we really want to do is just create best practices. That's it. Whether you're a team member listening or a dentist, this isn't about, making you feel anxious regarding it. We've just been on the other side to see this. And this whole entire show is just about best financial practices. We talk about them in accounting with taxes. We talk about them with financial arrangements with patients. And now as we talk about money management and a practice, Matt's going to take us through a process in which you can reduce the risk of it happening to you. Wouldn't you agree, Matt?
Yeah, people best practices is so important. And I think back to this story in Las Vegas that I was telling you about, and this employee had stolen $249,000 from one office. Then, they applied for another office while they were, I don't know, waiting to go to jail or whatever, and worked for that office. And exactly a year later, they were caught stealing about $10,000. And then 3 months later, in January of 2022, another $3,600. And so, I think there's this thing where we see experience and we get really excited and maybe don't do our best practices of a background check or doing a reference checks to make sure that this person is someone you want to bring into the practice. And I know California at least and has a civil code that got passed where you can share factual information about someone now without it getting back to you. So I remembered early in my management career, you couldn't say anything detrimental about somebody. Now you can say something like, "Hey, you know what? Matt was caught committing embezzlement in my practice," and you can share that. Um, I'm sure most other states have something similar. Now you can't say Matt was really shady, and I'm pretty sure he was stealing, but I let him go before I could find out. So obviously you can't say that, but factual information you can share.
Wow. See, I didn't even know that. Learned that today for sure. And is that recent? It just happened recently?
Not too long ago in California, yeah.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, I know you're national. And I don't know all the states, but I'm sure there's something similar in most states.
For sure. For sure.
Yeah.
And so take us through the best practices. So if I'm a dentist listening, okay, where do I even start, Matt?
Yeah. So be involved. You don't have to do everything, but you do have to be involved. Ask questions. Closely review what you're signing. The team should know that you're checking, or that you're spot checking, or that you're auditing. Have all your logins and passwords. There was someone that didn't want to go on vacation, and they kept all their logins and passwords and wouldn't share them. And when they finally went on vacation, the doctor had to reset the logins and passwords to help with some billing questions, and they unearthed all sorts of stuff. So make sure that you have access to that. It's not all just entrusted to one person. If you can have a system of checks and balances, like if you talk to any of the big, the remote billing companies, they'll have one person that does the billing and one person that does the posting of the checks. So if you can have that, recommend that. Know your deposits and your adjustments. So your software company, your practice management software should have people that can help you identify what reports to run or to put controls in place so adjustments are limited. Make sure everybody has their own sign on and password so that you can track who did what.
Yeah.
Those are just some of the involvement parts, but after that, have your controls and best practices in place. So like we talked about, access, segregation of duty, make sure your staff takes vacations.
Yeah.
That is one of the big red flags is staff that doesn't take vacations or never wants to leave.
Right. Let's go back to number one. I just want to ask you about a couple of those things and tell me if you agree. I think one of the best things you can do, obviously, have everyone have unique logins. And for for certain accounts, we use LastPass, which I love. And so you can actually share passwords, but they don't actually see what the passwords are. You share access via the passwords. And so they're encrypted. You can also change the passwords so they're extremely long, 18 characters, all that kind of stuff. And it works really well because you have a mobile app. And trust me, I am the least technical savvy guy there is. The other thing that I've heard, and we've started to do this now, I think almost every account we have internally, is two-factor authentication, if I'm saying that correctly, which means anytime there's a login to an account, I just get a text or an email, or it's usually a mobile notification that somebody's logged into this account just to tell me. Now, you might think that's a little burdensome, but I will tell you there are times I'm like, who is logging into it? Most of the time, it's one of my kids hacking something. But that's also important to know. And then just a system of checks and balances and random auditing. It's no different at home, with your kids. You just don't say, hey, trust you guys to do your homework, trust you guys to do your chores. It requires a little bit of auditing and sometimes random. And if you've raised teenagers, it's really good to be random. Like, I've heard my kids go, no, my dad's totally unpredictable. No, we can't do it at my house. So, and I'm not the greatest at that, but it is important to create some type of auditing or a regular system where they know you're looking at it. Whether it be once a week randomly, you're going to do the deposits. I have heard also the in and the out are two separate mechanisms where cash in and cash out are not the same person. Would you agree with all that? Or anything
Yeah,
you'd add?
absolutely. Something else that I heard an office do as a best practice that I loved was that obviously they're using carbon copy deposit slips, and then they're taking the deposit slips home with them. They're having the banking statement actually mailed to their house instead of to the office. And that way it triggers them like, I need to go back and double check these carbon copies with the deposits to make sure everything's in line.
Yeah, that's very, very good. I like that a lot. David Harris was on recently, and he said another thing when you talked about insurance checks coming in and out and adjustments, keep a graph monthly on the discrepancy. And over time, the discrepancy should be tighter because all these dollars come in at different points, and it's very hard to do a weekly or a daily, reconciliation. It's just too burdensome. But on a monthly basis, if you create a graph on what the discrepancy was last month, over time, they should even out. And it doesn't stop people from embezzlement. What it does is it creates extra hoops that someone would have to work really hard to outdo that type of a thing. And again, let me just say this to a team member or a dentist. You might be thinking, oh my gosh, you're provoking fear. A great team member that really wants to work for you the right way appreciates accountability. They appreciate checks and balances. They appreciate accounting. So I have found just in my 26 years of running this company, my favorite team members, they love accountability. They love graphs. They love numbers. They love it when you say, hey, listen, I'm going to help you with making sure all of this is accurate. Your least favorite ones don't want any eyes on what you're doing. So I think that's just an important overall philosophic, standpoint you have to have in the practice when you get started. I want to go back to background checks too, because this is amazing. Think about it. Somebody can write prescriptions in your office. You have a lot of cash coming in and out of your hands. It's silly to have somebody come into your office and just hire them without a background check, don't you think?
Right. Absolutely.
What's a background check cost? I mean, what's it cost? I don't even know.
$100 or less.
Yeah. So we do them, and Laura, I know they're less than $100, and make sure it's done by a great outfit, because you'll find things on there that you will say, wow, this is interesting. And again, it's information that you paid for. You can present it to a potential candidate and say, tell me about this. You'll also see employment on there that they haven't mentioned, so it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, and I'll tell you this. I mean, when we're talking about $100 for a background check, this study that I was looking at is the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners, and this was multiple industries. But what they found was the average loss from a manager is about $150,000, and from a non-manager, $60,000. So in comparison to a $100 background check, I think it's pretty smart to do them.
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, keep going. Yeah.
Well, I was just thinking back to what you were saying too about insurance checks and stuff, and we really recommend offices sign up for the EFTs and get the electronic fund transfers. That is your safest bet. Like, we're starting to see a lot of calls from people about checks getting misdelivered, misplaced, stolen, whatever it may be. There's still a lot of check fraud out there. And that's not easy money to get back from the plan. There's the virtual credit cards, which are easily stolen. On top of that, they cost you the 2 to 3% to process them. So we highly recommend that you turn down those virtual credit cards and you try to get EFTs. But I'll tell you, like, you have to be involved in the setup of the EFTs, because there was an office where we did consulting and remote billing for, and this doctor called us and said, "Hey, I don't understand why my office manager is going on nicer vacations and drives a nicer car than me." And so we started digging in and found out that several of the EFT accounts were set up to go to the office manager's bank account. And
Wow.
it had been several years and close to, $500,000 by the time it was all unearthed. And I want to piggyback on what you said. I know there's probably going to be office managers that I you're my favorite too. I don't you know, not trying to paint a bad picture about office managers or anything. I just, this is where a lot of it does come from for the members.
Yeah. And again, if you use best practices, there's a high level of accountability and transparency, checks and balances. You're going to find that you will lower, I can't guarantee it, but you'll lower that ever happening. One more thing I'll just add about, you said reference checks. Now, I got burned on this one really bad. So I'll just share with the listeners. Like, I was getting ready to hire somebody who had raving, like an incredible resume. It was an awesome interview, and it was a major dental corporation. And they gave me the name of their manager at a major dental corporation, and I called the phone number. And the person on the phone said, "That is one of the best of all time. You're crazy if you don't hire that person." What I did was I called the phone number that person gave me. What I've learned now is you always call the number of the company. You never call the number that they give you. Because what I found out later was I wasn't talking to the head of the company I thought I was talking to. I was talking to someone they had appointed to answer questions under that alias. That was a very painful mistake on my part. So I've learned now, because I've got burned, you call the company and say, "I want to speak to this person." And it'll take you a little bit. They'll get you connected to that person, but you can be assured you're talking to the person you want to be talking to. Agree?
Such a great tip. A colleague and I, Michelle, we did a whole webinar series on hiring and recruiting best practices, and that's something that she had found and started sharing with everybody too. Great tip. Great
Yeah.
tip.
Yeah. So what's number two? I'm sorry. We jumped to, I had so many questions just because
Mhm.
I love just, little tips and tricks like this, but take us through number two. You said you were
Yeah,
mentioning vacations.
yeah. Establish your controls. So the first part's being involved. The second one, controls and best practices. So, controlling your access, segregation of duties, take vacation. So do you know, like, your deposits? Do you know how much your deposits were? There was an office that, if you're familiar with HMOs, this office took HMOs, and they have a planned visit fee where you can charge a $5 or $10 copay, and every time that person paid in cash, they would delete the planned visit fee and just pocket the cash. And so, making sure you know those, and know there's a lot of practice management softwares out there have a report that'll show you how to delete or how to run deleted payments or deleted postings that you can check. So check with your practice management software. But that's controls. There's a story I like to share. Sorry, do you want to ask your question
No,
before?
tell your story and I'll ask you a question.
Okay. So this was an office manager in Vancouver, Washington. $123,000. And so this is why you need to be involved in a little bit of everything, because they didn't just steal one way. So $15,000 in cash, over $77,000 with checks, with the check stamper. So if you have one of those automatic stampers, please get rid of that. $25,000 in payroll. And so when I talk about payroll, I don't usually talk about clocking in 10 minutes late or something, stuff that's like time theft. This is actually like creating a fictitious employee and putting them on the payroll and then sending the check to their house. So $25,000 in payroll,
Wow.
$2,500 in Amazon. Which Amazon has great business controls, so I do recommend you look into those. But $2,500 in Amazon deliveries. But here's the kicker: because of that fraudulent payroll, the doctor had to pay an extra $2,200 in payroll tax. So, this was $123,000 over multiple different levels. So, it doesn't happen just one way, and they're not only doing it just one way. So, really recommend being involved in everything, not just one aspect.
Yeah. Now go back to vacations. You mentioned vacations. Share with me. I'm curious about that. What would you
Yeah,
recommend with vacations?
just make them take them. I mean, you go back to the trust piece that you were talking about earlier, and I hear this again and again that the broken trust hurts more than the financial loss. And it's the best employee that just never takes their vacations, never calls out sick, never misses work, has a super clean area, won't let anybody touch any of their stuff. It can be a red flag. And, it's if they're not there, or if they're there and they don't want to take time off, sometimes it's because they don't want people to find what they're doing. So if you do provide vacation and time off, make sure that your staff takes that time.
Yeah. Very well said. Very well said. So, and then what's your third tip or the third bucket that we put this in?
Yeah. So be involved, establish controls and best practices, and the last one is, your best people practices. So like we talked about, the background checks, reference checks. Make sure you report misconduct. That same ADA survey. You're going to be surprised. What percentage of people do you think got fired after the doctor found embezzlement?
I'm so curious. I would say it's pretty low, and I'm going to guess 30% or 40%.
Okay, they did better than that. So they did term 65%,
Okay.
but 35% of people got to keep their job after stealing from the doctor.
Right.
So,
And here's why I
don't,
say that. And so you and I were talking about before we hit the go button.
yeah,
Again, this is a very shameful, hurtful situation. There's a lot of dynamics that are going on. Number one, like we shared, the trust. There's a financial issue. Then you have this whole, wow, this is embarrassing. Do I let them go? Do I prosecute them? Oh my gosh, what if other people hear about this? I know everyone in this community, I wouldn't say most dentists, but a lot of people that don't do anything, they just want it to go away. I just want this to go
yeah,
away. I'm going to fire them for sure. And I just need it to go away. And sometimes they don't even tell the other team members. They're like, why is she gone? And they'll just say she wasn't, or he or she wasn't the right fit for the office without giving the team any further clarification. So there's a lot of dynamics that happen that are just beyond the money. When you do find somebody, let me just ask you this question. Matt, I'm thinking something is off here. What can I do? What do I do?
yeah. Use your partners. You have a lot of partners out there. You do have your risk management team. You do have hopefully a CPA or a payroll company. There's forensic accountants. There's third-party billers. I could even be happy to refer you out to anybody if you have questions. But really, just start the investigation process. So start trying to build the story. So if something looks weird, dig into it and find out why, or start looking for patterns. Or is this just one employee, or is this one family? Is it multiple families? Really start trying to dig in and peel back the onion and see, how deep this goes.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that. And Matt, we're going to leave, if it's okay with you, I'm going to leave your email address in the show
Yeah.
notes. If you guys aren't taking notes, don't worry. We always take them for you. You can flip up to the show notes and you can reach out to Matt. He's a great resource. And one thing I'll just add is if you're caught in the middle of this, it doesn't hurt to do a little homework. Once you get to the other side, whether it's happening or it's not happening, I think a great thing to share with all team members that handle any kind of money in your practice is to say to them, part of our values here is trust, accountability, transparency, best practices, something of that nature. It's a philosophical stance for the practice and how we do things. So it's not about you not trusting. I always want to do things the right way. We do them transparently. We talk about accountability. We have checks and balances and measure because we want to create a healthy relationship with employees and a healthy business. And part of that are these 12 steps or these 15 steps. So you are a new team member here. Here's how we handle money coming in. here's how we, in order to create that kind of organizational health for our practice. So,
Yeah.
don't,
An employment manual. Have an employment manual,
right,
and have that outlined in your employment manual that embezzlement's not tolerated, that it leads to termination and prosecution. And if you don't prosecute, the likelihood of you recouping any lost money from your insurance claims is minimal. They might require prosecution to recoup that.
right. Absolutely. So cool. Any last thoughts you have, Matt, just on how to create some best practices so this doesn't happen to you?
No, I one thing I did want to bring up too that I heard another office did is, they periodically ran a background check on themselves or a financial credit check on themselves or on their business, and it doesn't hurt to do that. Um, but really, as long as you start building your best practices, have your employment manual, do your background checks and your reference checks, have your controls in place, you're involved, so just people know that you're looking and touching things. Like, I think you can prevent a lot of this from happening.
Yeah. I appreciate you, buddy. It's great advice. And as always, I love what you guys are up to. And if you wouldn't mind, just stick around when we say goodbye to everybody else. So, thank you guys for listening to the Best Practices Show. I'm going to encourage you to check out the resources, or if you have questions, feel free to reach out to Matt. And again, our goal here is just to provide some great best practices and steps and protocols so that you never run into this. Because I'll just tell you, it's not fun as we listen to all of these stories. So hope you guys enjoyed the episode. If you did, just do us a favor, hit the share button, share this with your friends. Keep sending us suggestions, as you always do. I love them, for things that you guys want to hear about, and we will line them up. And so until we see you guys next time, or you hear from us next time, keep watching or keep listening to the Best Practices Show. You guys enjoy your day.